Hello everyone, and welcome to another TVP. And this time we're up against Notorious, and Notorious is a diamond level Protoss player. I don't remember his rank per se, but I do remember that it was somewhere in the top 8, so good player. Good enough for me anyway, good player for me. And as I'm sure you've noticed by the chat, this is not the first time that I've played against Notorious. On that very day, I actually played against him a little bit beforehand, and on that first game, he actually went for a sort of two-base stalker, semi all-in, semi not all-in thing that just didn't really work out for him. And already, 3 minutes, our opponent has not scouted us yet, which means that it does tell a little bit about his intentions here. And we will scout our opponent. We reveal 7x core, pretty much done. 100 gas mines, no chrono boost, and just barely started to mine from this geyser. So I don't bother scouting the third pylon because there's really nothing that he can do in terms of harassment early on. Not without this much gas. And our opponent behind this is going to be going for a mothership core, expand, late mothership core, but still. And he's going to be scouting with a stalker, which does encounter the marine, so engages a little bit, but forced to turn tail and run. And I don't think he noticed in this game. Okay, so the stalker doesn't see anything. And behind this, I'm actually pushing him with my marines. 5 is a good time for me to push. Since we did play against each other, there's a chance that he would have known or remembered, but I don't think he remembers anything about this game, or anything about the previous game. Almost loses stalker. Almost loses that one. And almost loses that one too. So Mothership Core is not, well, Nexus is not done. Mothership Core does not have enough energy. It's about 15 or so energy away, so a good 30 seconds from the photon overcharge. He has to pull probes here, and he does manage to hold, but he loses some probes, and the Mothership Core actually goes down before he can clean everything up. He does save the 3 stalkers, which is good on him, but as a general rule, it was a good trade for me. I got 7 workers, and the Mothership Core, which was about 100 energy on it. Good trade for me. I'm happy with that. In the income tab, I'm also just slightly ahead, especially with the triple orbital. This is really good. I'm in really good shape economically. Our opponent is going for Observer, but the Observer doesn't really spot the push. And although I have played him before, I'm not sure if he remembers me. I'm sure that it's starting to jog his memory by now, but you never know. So our opponent has really good force fields. The Mothership Core has enough, just barely enough, for a photon overcharge, which he doesn't use. I'm guessing because he thinks he has enough to hold me off here. I mean, he has like 10, 12 gateway units against 15 marines. But even though he has that much in terms of gateway units, 4 of them were sentries, so not that much firepower. In the end, he loses 3 sentries and could have lost the 4th one. He could have even lost the stalker here if I had focus fired, but oh well. Nothing wrong with being well mannered. Nothing wrong at all. So behind this, let's see, we're going for a stim back and combat shield. So we push out at 10:30. Our opponent is going for Twilight, so either blink play or storm play, or I guess ETs too. Now stim isn't done, so I can't engage here. Not quite yet. Just gotta stall for a bit of time. And over here, stim pack is done, but combat shield is not. It's a good 10 seconds away, and because of it, if I had just waited, this would have done way more damage than what it did. But because I was too angsty, too overzealous with my push, it just didn't do that much. However, our opponent does scout our 3rd, and this is great for us. This is I love it when this happens against Protoss. When our opponent scouts our 3rd, he feels invisible pressure, we'll say. He feels the pressure to try and either deny this 3rd or take his own 3rd, and he just doesn't have enough here, or at least doesn't think he has enough. And behind this, I do get my 4th. We push when 1 is almost done. In this game, they're a little bit off just because I forgot my +1. And we're going to engage here. Good force fields, good time warp too. Positioning of the force fields is working a little bit against him this time. That's okay though. Overall, good engagement. And the Mothership Core is the only thing providing high ground. It goes down, which means he's going to have a bit more trouble taking out my forces now that I have the high ground. Right, so instead of retreating, I just walk my units into his natural, because I'm a little bit scared of the immoral counts here. I don't want to deal with it quite yet. I want to make sure I can deal with that. So our opponent is forced back into his base, and from here on out, pretty good position. Our opponent actually has Psionic Storm on the way. From here we have Medivacs on the way, so we're going to be pushing again soon because 1-1 is usually done by this time. And our opponent's Storm is still a good 20 seconds away. He just spot this this push coming, but he doesn't have Storm yet. So from here on out, he's just going to try and delay as much as he can. We get a couple Zealots, even get the cannon, which is nice. And I don't see any Templars. They all look like sentries to me. And I actually lose like a good 5 or 6 Marines when I really shouldn't have. But that's okay. Once that he's revealed Storm, we're just going to try and engage as much as we can. We do get a couple Immortals, which is nice. I'm going to try and focus this one down. I stay a little bit too long. Should have just retreated. But oh. Right, so behind this our opponent has, well, he has Immortals. We have a lot of bases, and from here on out it's just going to be Bio versus Storm, but without the ghosts. So if you guys ever want to do this, just know that, well, this is probably the most standard way of going for Storm, is just to go for standard heavy armor upgrade, but without no attacks. The idea is that the Storms will do a lot of damage, and you're going to use the gateway units as a buffer, so that you can land the Storms. And ideally you want to engage with about between 20 and 30 bio forces. Units. There you go. Bio units. Our opponent scouts this. And you want to engage about 7 or 8 range away from the High Templars. If the High Templars are in the back, the Zealots are going to run forward and it's going to create a huge gap, which the High Templars are not going to be able to fill because they're too slow. So let's just try not to lose anything while we do this. And if the High Templars are in the front and the Zealots are in the back, ideally you just want to just retreat with your army and stim a little bit and try to snipe the High Templars. You don't really need to stim your bio back, just move it back and just snipe a couple of Templars while you're at it. Now, we try to engage here. The purpose of what we're trying to do here is to just force some Storms out, but more importantly, force some Storms out on his Zealots. Because the Zealots, well, they have a lot of armor, but the armor doesn't bypass the Storm. So anytime our opponent engages with the Zealots under his own Storms, it does a ton of damage. Opponent is going to try and harass, we thwart that. And that was his last Storm. I do scout that, so we're going to try and aim for a pincer attack here, which you do get out. And we're actually able to take out all of his Immortals, which is great for us. Our opponent is going to try and warp in some reinforcements, but our reinforcements is enough to thwart this as well. And the 14-15 Zealot Warping that you see in the late game, which causes a lot of problems with Terran, is always hard to deal with. The best way to deal with these sorts of things, the huge Zealot Warping, is to just drop in his main base. The positioning, especially with Protoss, because they're so frantic about the Sim City, the positioning of the building is always a good way of dealing with the Zealots, just because they just don't have the surface area that they would have in the base. This is a good way of dealing with Zealots and both High Templars. Now behind this, we thwarted the aggression. We're going to push out and just do some mass damage while our opponent is trying to handle this little force here. And in the end, he does realize that I have a huge force here, and that's pretty much GG. So once again, when trying to engage a Storm or a Templar-based army, especially if you're going for Zealot heavy, you want to engage your opponent in numbers of about 20 to 30, and you want to ideally make the Zealots walk through the Storm, just because they're going to have most likely a lot of armor, and the Storm bypasses the armor, so combination of the Storm and the heavy fire, the Zealots will not be able to last long. Just remember that if the Templars are in the back, you're good. If the Templars are in the front, you have to walk away. You don't really have to stim away. You can stim if they're a little bit too close, but as long as you're 7 to 8 range away from the Templars, you should be good. Now, one last thing to note is that the thing that makes this really work without the use of Ghosts is the medevac count. Without high medevac count, you will be in trouble. The reasons why medevac are so important, and I've said this once in the previous video, is that with enough medevacs, your Marines can actually survive a storm. Because the way it works is that storm does 80 damage over a period of 40 seconds. So the first second goes by 40 damage, and then your medevacs would heal. And the medevacs heal about 10 HP per second, so that takes off 10 damage off of the next 3 seconds. So 20 damage plus another 10, 10, 10. So in total, it would do about 50 damage, which unless you stim your Marines, then you should be okay to walk into a storm just barely and walk out alive. So I hope you guys liked this video. Hope it was informative. So I'll see you guys next time, and bye-bye for now.